Shimbol have sent us this transmitter and monitor to test. Now this is really interesting because Loz and I always self-film our videos and it's hard to get the composition on the screen straight away. And so using transmission and bigger monitors really help, almost essential sometimes. Because the amount of times we've filmed a video of, talking about technology and camera equipment and I've wandered off frame. So with this setup, I'm just demonstrating. I've got the wireless receiver here going into the monitor and it's transmitting from my Nikon Z8 through HDMI, and it only does HDMI only. I've actually used this a few times. The monitor can just go straight into HDMI into your Z8. Now the camera you're filming from has to have a HDMI out. You can't use USB-C like some devices. So you can turn the monitor facing forwards or backwards depending on what you're looking at, and you can self-film with a much bigger screen than you have before. Because of course the Z8 doesn't have a flippy screen to see. The ZF does, which I often use for self-filming because of the flippy screen where I can see what's going on. So we use this monitor and the transmission unit with filming Sarah. And it was really useful because we were working in quite a lot with professional lighting and tripods and things, everything in the way, and lots going on. So it's good to see a bigger screen where you can see where the focus is and what your actual camera sees with all the details and settings. You can turn that off, you can just have it without the Nikon settings, that's from the Nikon camera. But I find it really useful because I can see my microphone levels, the shutter speed, the f-stop. Let's talk about the build and handling of these devices. And for me, they are top rate. I really love the design of these Shimbol transmitters and receivers. Obviously very cultural, but I just love the style of it. It's great. Not very discreet, but I just love the design and solidly built. And you've got the switches on the side there to see the battery level, on and off. It's very simple devices. So as you can see, on the receiver, you have two HDMI outs. So you can send it to different devices, a USB power, and that is pretty much it. It's a very simple device that does, sometimes these devices can be really complicated, and this is just simple, just plug in, switch it on, and you're done. And the monitor itself is really nice display. I've actually had to calibrate it though, because the colour tones weren't the same as it was with the Nikon on the back of the screen, but that's easily adjustable with the controls. So you just tap the screen, it's just touch screen, you just click on that touch screen, and you got all these useful display information. So you can go through the scope metering, so you can see the waveforms, RGB channel, all that kind of thing, great. Then you have the marker menu, focus peaking. So if you turn that on, it shows you what's in focus on the screen, which is fantastic. I'll move this over here. Which is great. Peaking, so everything with a red outline is in focus. And when you're filmmaking, that's really essential, or doing photography even. It's hard sometimes if you're outdoors especially, and you can't always see the screen, the reflections, that this will show you where the focus peaking is. And the next one, of course, the zebra patterns for exposure, which is great because if I overexpose, which I can show you, try and show you now actually, let's try and overexpose me. Let's try and put me on about 2.7, so let's put it, obviously, yeah, so all this is overexposed and it shows it on the screen. And we also have the LUTs, so you can add your own LUTs with an SD card if you want to. It's not something I do, but it's useful to have. And then you have various settings, your brightness, contrast, saturation of this monitor. And like I said, I had to do the RGB, I had to change it slightly to match my Z8 on the back of the screen. So I can see what I'm getting with the white balance there as well. And I've actually left the zebras on for overexposure and actually shows my face is a bit overexposed in areas. I think that's just about all right, but maybe it isn't. You see, this is how it's really useful. So when you get these, they don't come with power supply, and that's a big thing for these. So I ordered the batteries there. And they're really cheap, about 30 or 40 pounds. You can get them for a pack of 2, but you'll need 3 of them unless you have continuous power from somewhere else. So you'll need one for the back here, for the receiver and the transmitter. So it's really something to consider because that's extra cost on top of that. because the devices and units are so cheap as it is, I can see why they didn't include them, because sometimes people just have them for other things anyway. And also HDMI cables like this. Short ones the better, so you'll need a pack of those for all the different ins and outs. I'm using my television one on my Nikon now, and it's obviously like 2 meters long, which is completely inappropriate. And also you can get, for the monitor, you can get a DC in as well, so if I didn't have one of those. So how does it work with the latency? Because we've reviewed these before, sometimes the latency is really slow and you don't get an accurate picture of what's going on. As you can see there, the latency is next to nothing. Maybe 1 second, but that is absolutely fine for most things, better than most actually. And the range is 600 meters, I believe, 500 or 600 meters, but I don't know when you would use that, but it has to be line of sight. So that's one of the drawbacks with this. I've reviewed other devices which are much more expensive transmission devices, and they work through Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and radio waves. You don't have to be in line of sight. So this receiver has to see the transmitter. But of course this monitor is great quality in my opinion, but it could be a lot bigger. And it's 1200 nits in brightness. Indoors it's absolutely fine. Outdoors you may struggle a bit at times. Of course with the sun on any screen it's going to really challenge it. It sends a signal 1080p, which looks fantastic on this size screen. I suppose it's a bit bigger than a mobile phone, but it looks really, really good quality. It looks 4K to me actually. I actually thought it was 4K at the start, but it's not. It's 1080p, which is fantastic. Of course, if you're putting them on your DSLRs, you're going to need more hot shoes. I mean, I've got my Rode, which uses a hot shoe for the sound, and well, it's dangling down at the moment. It's because I haven't got a double hot shoe, so there's another accessory you might want to think about. But I've had no connection problems at all with these. These work immediately, straight away. They're already, you don't need to tune them into each other. It's already pre-done in the factory. So these transmission devices don't have to go into the Shimbol monitor. It can go to any HDMI in, so whether that be your big 40-inch TV or anything really. The computer, if it has HDMI in, this will transmit to it. As long as you've got it in line of sight with this one to this one, you're good to go. These Shimbol transmission devices are £89. Now that is really good value for money. If you look at other transmission devices, they range from anything up to £2,000. So having a simple device that does the job well for £89 is a real bargain, I think. So the Shimbol M5 monitor is also great value for money, £125 at the moment in the UK. And with the quality of the screen and the tools you can use, such as the peaking of the focus and the exposure at the same time. So it was really fun trying these two devices, and it's good to see you can get relatively inexpensive transmission and monitor that works well and effectively.